Hello and welcome back to Climate TV, brought to you by the Climate Group. I'm Eduardo Gonçalves. Today we're going to be speaking to the Right Honourable Ed Davey, the former Secretary of State in the UK for Energy and Climate Change. Ed Davey, thanks for joining us. First of all, do you think we're going to see a strong and ambitious climate deal at Paris later this year?
I think the world wants to do an agreement in Paris, and I'm optimistic that we will get the world's first ever global agreement on climate change where everybody has to do something. And that itself will be a really big achievement. Of course, many of us would like a very ambitious deal where we really show that the global leaders have agreed to get us on the path to 2 degrees. And I think it's clear that we're going to fall short of that. But I don't think people should be dismayed by that. The fact we're going to get an agreement and the way that that agreement has taken place, I think is a real step forward. And let's remember, we've been working to this for 4 years, and I've represented the UK at a number of these international debates and summits. And I do sense not just that people are reluctantly agreeing, but actually realise that they've got to agree. And it's that change of mindset that lies behind things that gives me confidence that there will be an agreement, and actually it's going to be better than the actual text of the agreement.
How would you say the current text needs to change in order for it to pass and to really address climate change in an adequate way?
Well, there's both sort of the big picture and some of the small nuggets beneath that you've got to point to. I think the big picture is have people in their INDCs, their commitments, these intended nationally determined contributions, have we got to a stage where people feel that people are making real commitments backed up by programs of policies and actions that would deliver those emission reductions? I think that's one of the tests. I think another test is, at the big scale, is whether or not the world agrees to leverage up in the future, agrees that this is a first base, but we want to be more ambitious in the future, and there's a mechanism to enable more ambitious commitments and ambitious actions by countries in the future. So that's sort of the big picture, because people want to know, well, are the world taken seriously? Are they going to do anything? I think there are other things that are still really important but won't catch the headlines. They are things like, have we got the monitoring approach to make sure that people aren't cheating, making people are really delivering, and the reporting, the monitoring, the verification, even the accounting. Sounds really dull. That's incredibly important. And if we can get that right, at least make a big step forward, I think that will be important in itself.
What do you think about the bottom-up approach to getting agreement from different countries and getting those contributions? Has that been a success?
Well, I'll be clear with you, it wasn't my preferred approach and wasn't what the UK really wanted. But in the world of international negotiation, sometimes you have to settle for the reality. And the reality was that there are a number of countries, including China and the United States, who thought that a top-down approach was a breach of their sovereignty. And it was a real political complaint that they had. So we had to go for the bottom-up approach with its limitations. And we are seeing some of those limitations as the INDCs come in and they fall short of the 2 degrees. But on another level, there's something actually quite positive about it, and we should reflect on that. It means that the countries are actually having to do the work themselves. In order to say, well, we're going to deliver that, they've actually had to start thinking about it and do the work rather than being given a number. And by that process itself, it's forcing their civil servants, their businesses, their ministers, their machines to have to come to grips with this challenge. And why is that so important? Well, when people do start coming to terms with it and looking at it, I think they're going to find it a lot easier. And some of their concerns and doubts and fears will gradually be eased. So creating the machinery of having to do the bottom-up approach does have some real benefits, which might be masked by the lack of ambition in some of the numbers we're seeing, but actually for the long term create some machinery in nations across the world I think we can build upon.
Now, you're a veteran of these negotiations and the whole process to get a global deal. In your view, what does a successful outcome really look like?
Well, obviously an ambitious aggregated pledge from the world and a early pledge to go further as technology brings down the costs. I think that's obviously a key test. But I think bridging some of the gaps we've seen in the past, whether it's ensuring that there's more trust between developing and developed countries, that the money will be there, that the action and the help will be there to deal not just with getting rid of carbon emissions, but also helping with the damage that's already going to come from climate change that's already in the system. I think building that trust is going to be critical, and seeing a treaty and a dialogue that shows that trust is becoming genuine, I think that's going to be a really important part of whether this agreement is going to last and whether it can be built upon.
Would you say that wealthier countries have a duty to help poorer countries in helping to meet their climate and carbon targets?
100%. There's no doubt that the wealthy countries have a moral and actually an enlightened self-interest reason for helping. You know, if we clean up our act here in the United Kingdom, as we are doing and should do more of, it's no good if other countries don't do it as well. So this is a common problem. The carbon emissions, they impact us all wherever they come from. So it clearly is a logical thing that it's in the interest of richer countries and their citizens, the people who pay the taxes, that we help other people to adapt as well. Exactly the same argument with development. If you help other people develop and become better off, you've got markets for your own companies. Actually, enlightened self-interest says helping others, whether it's on climate change or on tackling poverty, is in everyone's, it will benefit everybody.
What, in your view, is the role of decarbonisation and low-carbon innovation in building a strong low-carbon economy that really tackles the challenge of runaway climate change?
They're central to it. I mean, one of the reasons why we need an agreement, why I was so proud that we developed the 2030 climate package in Europe, is that business, scientists, entrepreneurs, innovators need to know that governments, both in Europe and globally, are taking this seriously and are going to do something. Because when those messages get through, then a serious amount of money can flow. And the money that we have in government coffers won't be sufficient, but the money that's in private coffers can dramatically compel and propel the world into a clean, pro-climate friendly position. So, I think this is possible, but it's going to need those strong decarbonisation policies to send the right signals to everybody around the world.
One of the common phrases that's bandied about at the moment is the need for common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. Now, what does that actually mean? Is that a bone of contention? Is it something that could help or hinder getting us to a successful outcome at the end of the year?
Well, having spent many, many hours and days and nights negotiating with colleagues from around the world, that phrase that comes back from Kyoto and arguably before has dogged climate change talks for very many years. And while it's important we hold to some of what that says, because some of what it says is absolutely right, we need to go beyond that because the world has changed since Kyoto and continues to change at rapid paces. But there was a phrase in the Lima Accord which I think people haven't spent enough time focusing on because I think it's a way forward. And it's in the early part of the communique from Lima. And it brings in a phrase according to different national circumstances. And it qualifies the CBDR that we've all got used to. And I think that phrase, while it's a bit more static than I would like, because I think we should be talking about evolving national circumstances, nevertheless, it points in the right direction about where there could be a landing ground and agreement. And let's remember that phrase doesn't just pop up in the Lima communique. It pops in the very important US-China agreement that followed on from the EU 2030 deal last year. So I think we shouldn't dismiss. They look like minor words. They're really important. And therefore, because of the preparatory work that's been done on things like that, there's bones of contention over the years, a huge amount of thought's been put into how we get over those hurdles. That's one of the reasons why I'm more optimistic that we can do this deal and that it will stick and it will make a contribution.
Is there anything that gives you particular cause for optimism, given where we are at the moment and the things that are on the horizon?
Well, so I never thought I'd say it, but it's actually technology. And I'm not a technology boffin, and I think there's also other changes we need to make to solve the climate change challenge. But if you look at what has been happening in technology, clearly in solar, but also in wind and other technologies, there are massive reduction in cost, and the increasing levels of deployment is extremely exciting. And looking ahead at some of the R&D that's happening and could happen, particularly in energy storage, but also in new transport and so on, I really, really think that that technology is going to make agreement a lot easier, because technology is going to drive down the costs. And soon, and in many parts of the world, in many areas, we're already here. If you don't go green, you're going to lose business. And that's really exciting. And when I was in Secretary of State, we set up something in the European Union called green growth. And that's really the sort of nirvana, which I think we are. We're many sectors were already there, that we can develop and grow our economies, we can make our people more prosperous, we can tackle poverty and go green. And the people who say you can't, I'm afraid the evidence is now against them. And that's what's so exciting. And technology has been a key part of that.
The business community has been pushing quite hard for there to be a strong and ambitious deal done in Paris at the climate talks later this year. Do you think that the negotiators will have heard those business voices? Do you think that it will help to increase the level of ambition?
I think it's central. I think the voice of business has been one of the most positive steps forward in recent years. And you're right, it is different from Copenhagen. So, I would urge the businesses, whether they're members of the climate group or not, to feel that they really are having an effect. And the businesses I've talked to over the years, they're increasingly seeing it in their interest. They're knowing that whether it's their supply chains that are global, whether it's their overall costs, whether it's the cost of insurance, whatever it is, that there are many aspects of their business that are going to be affected if we don't tackle climate change. So it's in business interest, and I think that's why the voice has grown stronger and stronger on the back of the science.
Ed Davey, thank you very much. I was speaking there to Right Honourable Ed Davey, the former Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change in the UK. That's all we've got time for today here at Climate TV. From all of us at the Climate Group, join us again soon. Goodbye.